Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Dana Trupiana and I cover infamous gangsters every week on my show, Mob Times. If you're into true crime or you're into mafia history, you have come to the right place because that's what we do here. So it's been a pretty decent amount of time since I've recorded an episode, so before we get started on the final part of Stefano Magaddino, I do just want to do a quick little check-in, not very long, I promise. I've had a ton of stuff personally that's been going on that leads to me not recording quite as much as I would like to. First off, I have been so sick. I have a really bad immune system, so if I catch like a little cold, it's gonna turn into bronchitis, pneumonia, it just gets bad. So I did go to the doctor when it hit bronchitis, so I was able to like stop it in its tracks, but I have had this cold going on for like 2 weeks, and I mean, I feel like you could still hear it in me. I mean, most of the time I sound stuffy, but that has a huge impact. I just have not felt good. I haven't wanted to get out of bed. It's just not been going well for me. On top of that, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I lost my dog, Julie. You guys may recognize the name from the video that I did about Billy. She was the dog that Billy and I got together and we raised her together. And when Billy passed away, she stayed at the house with my family. I mean, it's been weeks, but I'm still so sad to have lost her. That dog was such a huge part of my life. But if any dog on the planet has like the biggest team of people waiting for her on the other side, it's her. She's got Billy. She's got my mom. She is straight. It's us that are sad. So as sad as it is, I'm really happy that she was able to reunite with everybody that we've lost because she was super tight with Billy and my mom was just her world. So yeah, we don't have her anymore. And that's sad, but you got to keep moving. In happier news, I did want to officially announce that I am expecting. If you guys have been on here a while, you've seen my videos for a long time, you might remember that about a year ago, I was going through multiple rounds of IVF. I had a pregnancy last year and I was pregnant with twins and they did not end up making it, which was heartbreaking and made me give up for good. I was like, I'm just not gonna have kids. I'm done. It's not happening. I gave it one true last go this past November. I was, okay, this is it. If it doesn't work out this time, I am officially done. I'll never try again. But that one last go did end up working out. And I'm happy to say that I am 16 weeks pregnant now at this point. By the way, if you hear breathing in the background, I have my dog Zeus in the room, so he's breathing, he's snoring. If you hear any overlap, it's him. So I'm absolutely ecstatic. Like, I have been trying for 10 years. I have been medically trying for 5 years, and I can't wait to have him and bring him on here, introduce you guys to him. I'm still mulling over boy names, so if you guys have any suggestions that are in the Italian bracket, shoot them in the comments. I'm leaning most likely towards Armani, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet. But that's the way that I'm probably gonna go if I don't see any other names that I fall absolutely in love with. So if you have any cute boy names that you think I would like, drop them in the comments. I would appreciate it. I was originally going to go with Carmine, but everybody has since informed me that that's a criminal name. He's going to be born with a record, so I'm not going to do that. I wanted Carmine. I love Carmine, but you know, even though I run a mafia channel, I don't actually want my kid to be in the mafia, okay? So we're not going to name him a criminal name. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the final part of Stefano Magaddino. This is the first series that I've had go past 5 parts. Angelo Leonardo was 5 parts, and I felt like that was absolutely insane. O.J. Simpson was 5 parts, and it felt like it was never going to end, but here I am at part 6. So I'm so ready to just get this officially wrapped up and move on to the next series. I do want to let you guys know I will be taking a short break from making videos. I'm not going to put a new video out for a few weeks. I have been writing my scripts by myself from scratch. I used to have a script writer. I don't utilize that anymore. So I'm doing it from scratch, and that takes a while to get together. I've also been writing / making a book, and I'm pretty wrapped up in that. Like every single spare second that I have, I've been making the book, I'm super, super into it. I'm so excited to get it out. But that's usually how I am with my scripts, which is why it's so easy for me to churn out episodes. But when my attention's on something else, you know, it just takes a little bit longer. The book that I'm making, it's going to be a really cool book. I can't wait for you guys to see it. I hope that you're going to like it. I haven't really seen very many similar things on the market, so I'm pretty psyched to see what everybody's response is going to be to it. So if you're a viewer or a follower on my channel, make sure you keep an eye out for the book that I'm making. It's going to be great, but it's going to be a while, okay? It's not coming out anytime soon. You guys will definitely be the first ones to know when I actually get it done, and you can choose whether or not to buy it. But I'm excited. I love it. So now let's get into the actual episode. So let's do a quick recap of the series so far. Stefano Magaddino was born in Sicily in Castellammarese del Golfo. He came over to America when he was a kid. He came to Buffalo after the Good Killers fell apart in New York. Magaddino landed in New York and lived there where he ran the Good Killers. But he came to Buffalo after the Good Killers fell apart, after Camillo Chiozzo was murdered by Bartolo Fontana at their behest. Fontana ratted, the Good Killers got off, and Bartolo Fontana ended up going to jail for the rest of his life. And after that happened, the Good Killers split up. They knew they couldn't keep going. Magaddino came to Buffalo and he started over there. Now, shortly after he arrived in Buffalo, the leader of the Buffalo family, Giuseppe DiCarlo, passed away, and Magaddino was tapped to be the next leader of the family at a very young age. He was like 31 years old. He's a kid. He said no. He wanted nothing to do with it. They said yes. So he took on the role in a temporary position to make everybody happy. He didn't want the role, but he didn't want to disappoint everyone, so he took it anyway. DiCarlo's son, Joe, was pissed off that Magaddino was given the job and that they didn't give it to him because he thought that it was his birthright as the son of the creator of the family to be handed the position of leading the family when his dad died, even though he was only like 21 years old and very, very, very immature. He still felt like it was his birthright. He deserved it, so it should have just been handed to him. So DiCarlo gets to the point that he's almost waging war on the Buffalo family in order to get that position of boss of the family. But Magaddino doesn't want to go to war, and he certainly doesn't want to go to war to keep a position that he never wanted in the first place. So he takes on Joe DiCarlo as the underboss of the family, and that kind of smooths things over. There's no war in Buffalo. Everybody's happy. Now, not too long of a time goes by before DiCarlo takes off. He wanted to be the boss of Buffalo so bad, but he didn't last very long in Buffalo. He took off and he headed to Cleveland and started to mess around with the Cleveland family. Magaddino puts another guy, John Montana, into the position of underboss, and one of Magaddino's kids would actually end up with the last name Montana, so he's not only the underboss, he's now an in-law. Magaddino is one of the biggest prohibition mobsters alive. He was easily able to import alcohol from Canada, where alcohol was not illegal, and bring it into America and sell it. So him and Capone, with their access to Canada, they really had it the easiest out of all the mobsters in the world. The Castellammarese War broke out, and Magaddino ended up backing Salvatore Maranzano as the new boss. Maranzano is from Castellammarese del Golfo, so it's not surprising that Stefano Magaddino backed Maranzano. And Maranzano ended up winning the war. But the power got to his head, and he didn't last very long, and Magaddino gets behind murking Maranzano. It happens. It wasn't his plan. Lucky Luciano was the one that put together the plan to get rid of Maranzano, but Magaddino made a very surprising move by being okay with getting rid of someone from Castellammarese, so you know that Maranzano did some bad shit for Magaddino to be okay with getting rid of him. Now, after the Castellammarese War is over and Salvatore Maranzano won, the commission is created, and an exception is made to the rule that the commission is made up of the boss of the 5 families of New York City. There's 2 exceptions to this rule, and the 2 exceptions are Al Capone in Chicago and Stefano Magaddino in Buffalo, so yay for each of them. Magaddino falls into the role of boss of the family. He gets okay with it. He opens businesses. He has kids, and some of those kids are involved in the mafia themselves. He gets really tight with Joseph Bonanno, who is his cousin, and he came over to America from Italy, and Magaddino took Bonanno under his wing. They got very, very close, and Bonanno would go on to lead the family that Maranzano had created. But the 2 are very tight. Like, these guys are BFFs, joined at the hip. They love each other. And they had very public, but also very, very fake feuds, which would allow Bonanno to go missing whenever the hell he wanted to. Whenever the hell he did some dumb ass shit and needed to escape, he would just blame it on his big bad cousin Stefano Magaddino while he's hiding in the wind and most likely at Stefano Magaddino's house. Now, while the public feuds between Magaddino and Bonanno are bullshit, Magaddino does have some real beefs going on behind the scenes and pretty publicly as well. But the ones with Bonanno are fake, but he does have real ones going on. Now, a bomb, which the public assumes was actually intended for Magaddino, went off in his next-door neighbor's house, and his next-door neighbor just so happened to be his sister. His sister got her 3 daughters out of the house, but she ended up dying in the fire. Now, although a lot of people assumed that the bomb was actually intended for Stefano Magaddino, me personally, I don't think so. I think that the bomb was intended for the house that it went off in. I absolutely think that they meant to put that bomb in Stefano Magaddino's sister's house. The bomb was thrown in retaliation for one of his mafiosi, his brother-in-law, who was scamming illegal bookmakers. He went and told them that there was an additional tax, and he never told Stefano Magaddino that he was doing this. So he's collecting a higher tax from the bookmakers, keeping the difference and handing, like, let's say it was 5% base, like it's always been 5%. He goes and tells the bookmakers it's now 7%, but he's still giving Stefano Magaddino 5% and just pocketing the 2% difference. And people were pissed that he was doing that, and they had a feeling that Magaddino had no idea what was going on. The bomb that went off in his sister's house, his sister was married to the guy that was doing that, the one that was pocketing the difference of taxes. And unfortunately, Magaddino's sister died. And because the house was right next door, and because Magaddino is so much more well-known than the husband or anybody else in the scenario, people just automatically assumed that the bomb was meant for him. But personally, I think that it was intended for the brother-in-law. And I don't think any mistakes were made there. I don't think anybody meant to kill his wife. Nobody does that. But it went off in the right house, if you ask me. Many, many, many years later, another bomb would be thrown into Stefano Magaddino's window in 1958, but it would never actually end up going off. So while Magaddino has plenty of fake public feuds, he has real ones going on. Like, he's getting bombs thrown at his house. He has a sister dying next door who's married to someone in his gang. So this guy doesn't just, it's not smooth sailing for him in the least. The Apalachin Meeting takes place, and it ends up getting broken up by police, and a whole bunch of people got arrested and put on trial for their part in the Apalachin Meeting. Magaddino claimed that he had a heart condition, and he used that claim as an excuse as to why he couldn't testify at the trial, but they didn't end up really caring that much because they couldn't even prove that Magaddino was at the Apalachin Meeting because he was never arrested there. He didn't get arrested because he didn't run when the cops showed up, and they never actually got a warrant to enter the house, so it was super easy for him to get out of it. So when he said, I have a heart condition, I can't testify, what are they going to do? They wanted him at the McClellan Commission trials. They wanted him there. Everybody and their mother knew that Magaddino was at the Apalachin Meeting, but they couldn't prove it. So what are they going to do? Say, oh, we don't care if you die while you're on trial for something that we can't can't even prove that you took part in? Like, no, they're not going to do that. So as I said, once in a while, there was a fake public feud between Magaddino and Bonanno, and one of those was during the French Connection and when the French Connection was being established. Bonanno supposedly intruded on Magaddino's territory in Canada when he sent one of his mobsters, Carmine Persico, up to Canada in order to establish the French Connection. And the French Connection, it's just a drug ring that got drugs from France to America. Canada was one of the big stops along those routes, and the Canada Mafia family was actually the one that set the ring up in the first place. And apparently, Magaddino was pissed off that Bonanno was kind of stepping on his turf by sending one of his guys to Canada, where Magaddino was running Canada. But yet, when the Apalachin meeting took place, he sat his happy little ass inside the house right next to who? Carmine Galante. Now, picking up where we ended the last episode, the French Connection was really started by these three guys, two brothers who became friends with one other dude, and this would create the Papalia-Agueci Network. And that little network of three guys would later initiate the French Connection. And one of the huge ways that they were able to get the drugs into America was by finding people that were leaving Canada and coming to America anyways. Immigrants that were leaving Canada and coming to America, they weren't really searched before they got on the boat to come over here. So it was super easy to just load them up with drugs. They were making the trip anyway. Load them up with drugs, have somebody at the port in America to pick up the drugs, and they would just pay the people that were coming off the boats, and they had drug carriers. It was great. Brilliant little setup. It worked out swimmingly until somebody got arrested, and they blew the entire operation up because isn't there always a rat? And that is where we ended off. Let's go ahead and get started on the new information going on. So, quick reminder, the Agueci boys were two brothers named Alberto and Vito, and obviously their last name was Agueci. The Agueci brothers were born in Trapani, Sicily, and they left Italy and headed to America in 1950. But when they got to America, they were sent away as undesirable aliens. And instead of turning around and going all the way back to Italy, because that's just like not something they felt like doing, they decided to just land in Canada and try living there. In 1960, they relocated to Hamilton from Toronto, so they had been in Toronto for about 10 years. They relocated to Hamilton, and when they got to Hamilton, they started working with a man named Johnny Pops Papaya. Papaya had been born in Canada, but his parents were immigrants from Italy, and they were in the life, so this boy was raised in the mafia. His family led one of the three crime families in Hamilton, the Papaya family. Now, together, the brothers and Johnny Pops worked together and created the Papalia-Agueci Network, and they became an integral piece in the French Connection and would actually establish the entire drug ring. The drug ring went really well. It made a lot of people a lot of money. They were able to get a whole ton of drugs into America. Everything was going great. Until two smugglers were arrested, and they decided to turn informant in October of 1960, and the entire drug ring came crashing down. The testimony of those two smugglers led to the arrests of over 20 men, and two of those 20 men were the Agueci brothers. The drug ring arrest started a whole chain of events, especially in regards to the brothers Alberto and Vito Agueci. These brothers are pretty important members of the Magaddino crime family, and Alberto is even mentioned as the leader of the gang in documents surrounding the Havana Conference. So these are really important guys. The fact that they're arrested is pretty big deal. Alberto and Vito Agueci are arrested for carrying out crimes for the Magaddino crime family in Canada in relation to the French Connection, because remember, the two smugglers ratted them out. They got caught, they ratted, they didn't want to go to jail forever, whatever. They rat, now the Agueci brothers are in jail. So the Agueci brothers, they get arrested, and they're like, all right, no big deal. Big Daddy Magaddino's gonna go ahead and take care of this. He's gonna get us out of jail. It's cool. We're in the mafia. Remember, Magaddino went to Bartolo Fontana, and he told him, like, listen, we have 500 grand sitting in a bank account ready to use in your defense if you end up getting arrested. You are Gucci. So I'm assuming that Magaddino said that line to everybody. Everybody assumed, like, okay, if we get arrested, we're going to go down. Magaddino's going to do something about it. And we're super, super important guys. These Agueci boys, they're leaders of these gangs. So they're assuming, okay, great, this is going to go super easy for us. We're not going to go to jail. Magaddino, Big Daddy Magaddino is never going to let that happen. They were mistaken. So they're like, yeah, he's going to get us out. All we got to do is kick back and wait. We're good. The judge puts in place a huge bail for each of the two brothers, which is like crazy. And it's a huge amount. And the judge really only puts it because they know that nobody's ever going to be able to pay this amount of bail. Like, figure if today you got arrested and you got $1 million bail, like, you ain't posting that. And it's the same story here. Like, each of these two brothers has a huge bail amount. But again, Big Daddy Magaddino's gonna come through. He better. So weeks go by and there is no sign that Magaddino's gonna step up and help. They're rotting away in jail and nobody's doing anything. Alberto's wife goes and visits him in jail, and he's like, bro, like, you gotta do something. You gotta get me the fuck out of here. I cannot sit in jail forever. Like, do something. I cannot do this. Do whatever you have to do. Get me the fuck out of here. Right now, do something. So Alberto's wife, she's like, fuck, like, this sucks. But this is where the saying ride or die comes from. And I'm a ride for my husband, okay? I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna get this man out of jail. She goes and she sells her house. She calls all of her relatives and borrows as much money as she could possibly get for each of them. And she eventually comes up with $15,000 to get Alberto out of jail. So $15,000, that's a lot of money. It's a whole lot more money back then. It's not quite $1 million, but it's a lot of money. But now Alberto is pissed. He's like, oh, hell no. We got arrested running rackets for this super powerful mafioso that runs around and tells people, oh, it's okay if you get arrested. No biggie. I will get you out of jail. I have connections. I have money. You're more than good. And he let us rot in there. My brother is still rotting in jail right now. Screw that. So Alberto is all set. He's going to retaliate against Magaddino. Alberto comes up with a genius plan, and his genius plan is to tell Magaddino that if he doesn't get Vito out of jail and help him get through this super tough time, because he doesn't have a house. His wife just sold the house, took loans from every person in the family. He is absolutely screwed. So if Magaddino doesn't get his brother out of jail and get him out of this super tough spot that he views Magaddino as putting him into, he's singing. He is going to go and tell everybody everything. He's going to tell police. He's going to get himself and his brother out of jail. And even though Magaddino was not arrested in this drug ring, it is Magaddino's ring. And Magaddino profits regularly from its spoils. So if he doesn't do something about it, Alberto is singing like a canary. The burned remains of Alberto Agueci were discovered on November 23rd, 1961 in a cornfield close to Rochester, New York. And I laugh, but it's not funny. Like, this is some messed up shit, man. This is some brutal torture level shit. But like, what did you expect? What did you think was gonna happen when you go to somebody like Stefano Magaddino and say, oh, I'm gonna rat. I'm gonna turn around and rat. You better do what I said. Like, did you really expect that to work? You really thought, oh, I'm just gonna threaten him. I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna sing and he's gonna cave right away. No, you didn't expect your body to show up? Come on, man. Like, it's just not smart. It's not very smart. So before we move on from this happening, I do want to talk a little bit about what Agueci's body looked like when it was found. Because his body was not just burnt, and this was not an easy death. I'm just going to go ahead and quote the article here. I'm not going to try to reword it because I don't think I can put it into better words than this article already put it into. Please be advised, I am going to add an extra chapter here because this description is so brutal that I totally understand if you want to just skip to the end. So if you're squeamish, if you don't have a strong stomach, skip to the next chapter because this is some brutal ass shit. If you're still here, huge, huge trigger warning. This is upsetting, this is gory, this is brutal, and it might mess you up a little bit, so I'm sorry about that. Again, please feel free to skip to the next chapter. It won't mess you up in watching the episode. There's an extra chapter just for this reason. So again, trigger warning, if you're still here, this might do some damage. When Alberto Agueci's body was found, they were able to identify what the last few days of his body looked like. This is what he went through. And again, this is just me quoting the article. I'm not rewriting this, so this is literally a quote from the article. While still alive, over 30 pounds of flesh had been cut from his body, his jaw broken, and half of his teeth kicked or knocked out. A blowtorch had been applied to his face, blinding him, and he had been tied to a tree with barbed wire before his genitals had been hacked off and stuffed into his mouth. According to a coroner's report, his fatal torture had been spread over a number of days, and his body was so badly mutilated that it was identifiable only from his fingerprints. Alberto's brother, Vito, wanted blood after his brother's death. So that's the end of the quote from the article. Brutal shit, man. I'm telling you, that's wild to think about. The shit that happened to him while he was alive. His testicles being put in his mouth happened while he was breathing. He felt that. He didn't even pass out. They were able to prove that he lived through that. Literally nauseating. Oh my God. Whew. So after this happened, Alberto's brother Vito, obviously he wants vengeance. He wants blood. I can only imagine the brutal way in which he was killed has a lot to do with how badly he wanted vengeance. If you found out that your brother was just tortured in the most inhumane way ever conceivable, you're gonna want blood too. But he didn't get to carry out any kind of retaliation. He went to jail shortly after Alberto's death, ending up in a federal penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia, with Vito Genovese and another one of Buffalo's most infamous gangsters, Joseph Valachi. Now, Vito Agueci is actually the one that Joseph Valachi blamed with telling Genovese that he had become an informant before he actually had become an informant, which led to him getting the kiss of death from Genovese and Valachi infamously killing the dude that he thought had been sent to kill him. I went over this a lot in my Gambino episode. I'm not going to go through this again, but if you're interested, go check out the Gambino episode. I talked all about how Valachi ended up becoming a rat. According to Valachi, it was actually Vito Agueci that caused all of this because Vito Agueci just turned around out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever and said that Joseph Valachi was a rat, which led to everybody wanting to kill him, which is why he killed this random dude and turned around and ratted in the first place and took the entire mafia into a shitstorm with him. Valachi would go on to become the first big informant on the mafia, giving everything that he knew about the inner workings of the mafia and giving the 5 families of New York City the names that we know them by now, because those were the guys that were leading the families at the time that Joseph Valachi went to the McClellan Commission trials and told everything about the mafia. So that's where the 5 families came from. That's why we now know them as the Gambino family, the Lucchese, the Colombo, the Genovese, and the Bonanno family. It came from the testimony of Joseph Valachi. Joseph Valachi gave testimony because somebody had lied and said he was an informant before he actually became an informant, and that person was Vito Agueci. Now, after all of this drama goes on, there's a whole lot of problems going on with Buffalo lieutenants. Stefano Magaddino goes to Fred Randaccio, and he has him and a few other of his trusted guys start to lead the mafia rackets in the city of Buffalo. DeCarlo's brother-in-law, Sam Pieri, possessed a huge amount of clout in the underworld once he was released from prison in the spring of 1963. In prison, he gained a lot of really close friendships with the leaders of the Profaci and the Genovese crime families in New York City, and he was able to do this because he was in jail for a really long time. He did 7 years in Atlanta Federal Prison where all of the Valachi shit had just gone on. So a lot of these big-time mafia gangsters are sent to this Atlanta Federal Prison. They're able to form even stronger relationships in the mafia, so when Sam Pieri got out of jail, he had formed a whole bunch of different relationships, and now he's super, super, super important in the underworld. But that's not a great thing because Magaddino does not trust Sam Pieri. So Magaddino and Randaccio, they perceive Pieri as a threat to their authority. They feel like he's coming out swinging. He wants the position of boss, and he's not going to stop until he gets it. And Magaddino and Randaccio, they are just not going to allow that to happen. They're not going to let it get to that point.
Over time, Magaddino became really paranoid about the FBI knowing everything that went on in
his operation and within his family. And honestly, he has every right to have that fear. The FBI would install eavesdropping equipment or wiretaps in pretty much every place Magaddino went. There was electronic eavesdropping equipment in the Magaddino Memorial Chapel, a funeral home that served as the primary meeting spot for the Magaddino crime family, his house, like anywhere that he went, they were putting wiretaps. Within 3 years, these devices collected enough data to fill 70,000 transcribed pages. 70,000 pages. Do you know how much information you need to cover 70,000 pages? When prosecutors were testifying before the McClellan State Investigating Committee in 1963, Magaddino was identified as the irrefutable boss of the Mafia in Western New York and Southern Ontario. In June of 1963, one of those bugs picked up Magaddino talking, and I'm just going to read the exact quote of what he said here. He said, "They know everybody's name. They know who's boss. They know who's on the commission. They know Amico Nostro, the password, our friend. They said to me, 'What is your capo regime doing here? What did he come to tell you?' They knew that 11, 12, 13 were massaged or beaten up. To Carlo Gambino, they said, 'This is your underboss. This is your capo regime. This is your consigliere.' So you could tell through these wiretaps that he's getting increasingly paranoid. He would talk on the wiretap about how the FBI and their mounting pressure would lead people to drink. Like, in particular, Carmine Lombardozzi, a New York City mob figure, turned into an alcoholic because of how much pressure the FBI placed on him and his organization. When they found out that he was drinking a lot, they got him on a parole violation for getting drunk in public. Like, they were just messing up everybody's lives. In another recorded conversation, he said this to Anthony DeStefano. "You see, the Cosa Nostra, the other day, they made me become frightened. They know our business better than us. They know the heads of the families, the Capo di Cena, the FBI does. Therefore, that's why the other day I say, be careful before you open your mouth. Because sometime somebody could be a spy and you might think he is Amico Nostro or a friend of ours." Now, in the beginning of this episode, I said that there was a lot of very public and very fake feuds going on between Magaddino and his cousin Joseph Bonanno. One of those fake feuds was when Magaddino had been rumored to be meddling in Bonanno crime family affairs and had actually orchestrated the kidnapping of his cousin Joseph Bonanno. Magaddino obviously comes out, he denies these rumors, and it's clear to anybody with eyes and half a brain that Magaddino had absolutely nothing to do with this farce of a kidnapping. The state had called on Magaddino to testify in investigations relating to the disappearance of Bonanno, and repeatedly, Magaddino kept just being like, "No, I'm sick. No, my heart hurts. No, I have a heart condition. No, I'm going to have a heart attack." And they just kept coming and coming and coming, and Magaddino was like, "No, make me, bitch, you can't." I made a video about Joseph Bonanno. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, but if you guys haven't seen my channel a lot, you don't really know exactly what the war was. So this war, it was called the Banana Wars. And it's a war that happened within the Bonanno organization because Bonanno was ousted as the boss of the family on the commission. This happened because he had a plan to kill Magaddino, Carlo Gambino, Tommy Lucchese, and Frank DeSimone. Again, this is a complete farce. Magaddino would have never been included on that list if it was a real list. I'm calling bullshit. Now, we only know that Bonanno had actually planned on killing these guys in the first place because he hired Joseph Colombo, who was a top Perfacci hitman at the time, to carry out these murders. So Bonanno goes to Colombo and he's like, "Hey, I want you to do this for me. I want you to go kill all of the important people in the mafia. Okay, no big deal. Just do it." So Colombo gets these orders and he's like, "Oh shit, this is a huge opportunity for me. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not killing a whole bunch of people, but these are really important guys in the mafia. This could be my in. I'm really not very much of anything." Like he was barely in the mafia. He wasn't very important. He wasn't leading a crew. He was just kind of a guy in the mafia. So instead of going and even attempting to carry out these hits, he goes to the guys that he was ordered to kill and he tells them that he has a contract for their heads. Now, after Colombo brings this to the commission and tells them about what he was ordered to do, it becomes public knowledge. The commission called Bonanno to appear before them, and he tries to lie his way out of it. Now, all of that wild shit goes on. Bonanno tries to hire Colombo to kill all the important people in the mafia. Colombo goes, he tells the mafia what happened. The commission is calling Bonanno to appear before them. And on top of that, Bonanno is being called to testify before a grand jury. And it's looking like, very likely, he's probably going to go to jail. So with all of that coming down all at once, on October 20th, the day before Joseph Bonanno was set to appear before a grand jury, his lawyers claimed that while he was at dinner with them, he was walking out of the building alongside his lawyer. Now, again, according to the lawyer, Bonanno was abducted as he approached the apartment building where one of them was staying on Park Avenue and East 36th Street. He was kidnapped. It just so happens that the commission wants him dead. He's about to go to jail. He doesn't want to testify. He doesn't want to go before the commission. But yeah, sure. He's abducted. Now, after he is abducted, as per his lawyer, there's a newspaper columnist named Walter Winchell. And Walter Winchell comes forward and he writes a column saying that Bonanno had been kidnapped and was being held upstate in a farm by Magaddino. In May of 1965, Magaddino was summoned to appear before a grand jury that was investigating the disappearance of Bonanno because, remember, he was supposed to testify in front of a grand jury. He was most likely going to jail. So the fact that he disappeared is like a problem. It's serious. Magaddino pulled the same thing he pulled every time he got called to testify. He didn't appear, and then the next day he went to the hospital after experiencing coronary symptoms. This is literally a game that him and Gambino perfected. Oh, I have to testify? No, I have a heart condition. And then they're in the hospital the next day. And the press and the government were not fooled by this. The press started running stories that Magaddino's health problems just so happened to coincide with the demands of the government for him to testify. And it happened for the second time in 5 years. So everybody's catching on to this little game that he's playing. Bonanno was eventually returned, and he claimed that he had been kidnapped by Magaddino, and then Magaddino had let him go, and then he went to like Arizona. It was like the biggest farce of a story you'll ever hear in your life. It was so freaking stupid. And the fact that people still to this day will claim that Bonanno was kidnapped by Magaddino, who was his cousin, who they spent their entire lives being attached at the hip. Like, it's just the stupidest idea ever. It literally irritates me that people believe that this is real. Like, he was not kidnapped. He didn't want to go before the commission, who probably was going to order him to be killed. He didn't want to testify in front of the grand jury. He didn't want to go to jail. So he pretended to be kidnapped. And I'm sure he was with Magaddino, but he was not kidnapped. Let's be straight here. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He wasn't kidnapped. So whatever, that goes on, you know, life moves on. Bonanno ended up getting demoted. He didn't get killed, but the commission ordered that he not lead the family anymore, and Colombo was handed the position as boss of the family, which is a huge win for somebody that was literally like a street mafioso, was doing barely anything, and was just handed the position of boss of one of the 5 families. Which is why we now know one of the 5 families as the Colombo family, because this all happened before Valachi got a chance to testify, and then when Valachi testified, Colombo was the boss of that family. Now, Magaddino's territory, it's pretty remote when you're thinking about New York City. Like, I live in New York, and Buffalo is so far away. I would never even think about just like going there. It's like 7 hours away from me. It is far. But he controlled a lot of space. So even though it's really far away from New York City, it's a lot of space. He controls pretty much all of upstate New York and a huge section of Canada. Because of how far away he is from New York City, he's not really dragged into the inter-family squabbles that go on between the 5 families in New York City. He's kind of insulated from all that drama, which is cool for him. But he was looked up to in the mafia. Like, overall in the mafia, he was a very respected figure. So people would occasionally call on him to be an arbiter between beefs that went on because he was well known to be able to mediate. Magaddino was a dominant presence in the Buffalo underworld for over 50 years. He was the longest serving boss in the entire American Mafia history. Like, he had a very, very long and successful career in the Mafia. He attended the 1946 Havana Conference. He was at the Apalachin Conference, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of other conferences that we didn't know about because nobody ever ratted about them, but he attended them. Like, any building block that happened in the Mafia, Magaddino was there, and he was a part of it. He worked together with Alberto Agueci and Johnny Papaya to get rid of Rocco Pieri in 1944, and that allowed him to gain a lot more control in the Canadian market. Rocco Pieri was a really famous Hamilton bootlegger, and they were able to get rid of him and gain a lot more control and a lot more territory, and that helped to really bolster his significance in the Mafia. After Pieri vanished, there was 3 lieutenants that were working under Pieri: Tony Silvestro, Calogero Bordenaro, and Santo Schibetta, which were known as the 3 Dons. And after he got rid of Pieri, he adopted that family into his Mafia family, and they began reporting to him. Now, in November of 1968, things started to kind of go south for Magaddino. Profits started to diminish. Things started to get very, very hard financially for the family. And Magaddino was obviously not happy with this. So instead of trying to figure out like smarter ways to make money or whatever, he decided that he was going to go to his lieutenants and increase the percentage of their profits that they had to kick up to him. On top of that, he usually sent out end of year bonuses to them and just like was very generous with money, but he stopped doing that when financial times got hard. The FBI and the Niagara Falls police would link the Magaddino crime family leadership to the use of telephone lines for laying large sports bets, and they were all over the country. So it wasn't just in Buffalo that they were doing this. They were betting on sporting events all over the country. And that's really bad because, like, yeah, illegal gambling is bad and they feel one certain type of way about it. But once you get into federal wiretapping charges, that's when, like, yeah, they own your ass. Magaddino, his son Peter, Benjamin Nicoletti, and a lot of other people were arrested in November raids. Now, during these raids, police went and they searched Magaddino's home, they searched his son's home, they searched everybody's house. When they went to Peter's house and they started searching it, they found a secret door at Peter's house. And behind this secret door, they found over $500,000 in cash behind this door. Because they were able to show that this family actually does have money, the IRS placed liens against Magaddino's property. Now, when they found this $500,000 in Peter's house, they may not have been able to do much about it, but what they were able to do is they were able to tell the media. And then newspapers started printing that $500,000 was found at Peter Magaddino's house, while Stefano Magaddino is increasing the amount of money that his lieutenants have to pay and not paying end-of-year cash bonuses, crying that he's running out of money, that there's no money, that he's broke, but there's 500 grand sitting at his son's house. So when the family found out about this, they found out that they're getting charged all this money and they're losing out on the bonuses that they usually get, but there's a shit ton of money sitting at his son's house. Everybody is pissed, and it just increased hostility in the family, and things just started to snowball. In March of 1967, a huge arrest took place. 2 of Magaddino's top men in Buffalo, Federico Randaccio and Pascal Naturale, were arrested alongside Joseph DiCarlo and about 35 other men. These charges would end up getting dropped, but during this arrest, Randaccio really pissed off Magaddino. I don't know exactly what happened because it's a little weird. Okay, so the cops come to arrest Randaccio and all of these people. You got, I don't know, figure like 40 people that get arrested. And when the cops come to arrest them, Randaccio goes off. He curses the cops out. He loses his mind. He makes a whole fool of himself. And when this happens, Magaddino is pissed. Like, first of all, we know from the Apalachin meeting, Magaddino does not mess around with this shit. He takes this shit very seriously. Like, the way that you behave yourself is very important to him. He is very like, gangsters don't run. We're not going to have it out with the cops. He's the type to like put tea out for police, okay? He's not out here cursing cops out, freaking out on them. That is not a thing that he does, and that is not a thing that he allows his people to do. Magaddino loses his mind on Randaccio because his behavior is just appalling. And on top of that, this is really your fault, because if you had maintained your political connections, if you had paid off the cops correctly, this never would have happened. You would have known this raid was coming, and you wouldn't be out here making a fool of yourself and making a fool of me, because I'm the boss of the family. And what do you think is going to happen? What's going to be in the newspapers tomorrow? Stefano Magaddino's underling, Federico Randaccio, makes a fool of himself. Absolutely goddamn not. So Magaddino is over this boy. He is pissed. So later that year, when he's arrested again, Randaccio's arrested again alongside Naturale again, and this time Stephen Chino, Charles Cacci, and Louis Sorgi are all arrested at the same time on federal conspiracy charges. And these charges are stemming from robberies that are going down in California and West Virginia. And at this point, Magaddino is already over him. Like, you made a fool of yourself, you made a fool of me, you didn't maintain your connections, and this is all your fault. So because Randaccio and Naturale are two of his top men in Buffalo, the loss of them when they were given 20-year prison sentences each is huge. Like, this is very, very bad for the Magaddino crime family. The loss of his two highest guys allowed an anti-Magaddino faction to come in and take control of the city, and Magaddino would never be able to regain control of the territory ever again. Before he was arrested, Randaccio had been heard on a wiretap talking about getting rid of Agueci's charred corpse after he tortured and killed him. Remember, that's the guy from the French Connection, the one that was arrested and then they tortured and killed him from earlier in this episode. I would assume that providing evidence that he took part in that murder would help put him away for 20 years. Now, when Randaccio got out 11 years later, he retired, and a lot of people were assuming that he would either go and join the Magaddino family again, or he would go to war and try to take control of the territory again. I don't know, but I'm guessing Magaddino just never forgave him for cursing out the cops and allowing himself to get caught. And that led to him retiring. So he wasn't killed. He wasn't, it wasn't, oh, if you leave the mafia, you'll die. He retired quietly. No one ever heard from him again. He lived his life out quietly, but he definitely did not get into the mafia again. Now, this rebel faction chose Sam Pieri as the interim boss, Joseph Fino as the interim underboss, and Joseph DiCarlo as the interim consigliere in July of 1969. And I'm sure DiCarlo is loving shoving this in Stefano Magaddino's face, because he always felt that it was his birthright to become boss of the Buffalo family, and he didn't. So he went and got with the rebels. So the rebel group turns around and they make a demand that Magaddino step down as the leader, and it was rejected by the commission. The commission was like, get the fuck out of here. That's Stefano Magaddino. He's been boss for 30-something years. Get over yourself. It's absolutely not happening. No. The commission did absolutely nothing. The rebel group thought that the commission should turn around and punish Stefano Magaddino, but they didn't. They weren't making him step down. They weren't punishing him. They were just, that's Stefano Magaddino, we're not doing shit. But what they did do is say that we're going to allow this toothless tiger to just die. And then when he dies, we'll figure it out. But until he dies, he's the boss and there's nothing you can do about it. So let's talk really quick about an art theft that was orchestrated by the Buffalo Mafia in 1968 from the home of T. Edward Hanley, an affluent art collector in Buffalo. In this burglary, Hanley lost his entire collection of really expensive art pieces that was valued at about $1.3 million in the 60s. That would be worth about $12 million nowadays. So it's very, very expensive art. There was pieces by guys like Picasso and Cezanne in this art collection. Like, it was a big deal that they were able to get their hands on this entire collection. It really sucked. Hanley's wife, Tullah, became determined to recover this stolen artwork. Tullah made a statement to the public and offered a reward for the safe return of the artwork. And she pretty much said, like, the thieves that did this were amateurs. They were pretty much just mocked the shit out of them. They were bitches. But after she did that, the police came out and they said that the robbery had definite Cosa Nostra flavor. So now we know the mafia is involved. Hanley would end up getting his stolen artwork back, but Tullah would come out as the star of the show. And let's talk about her for a minute because this girl was awesome. A few of the guys from the Magaddino crime family were arrested, including Russell DeChico, Louis Mavericks, and Greg Parness. When the trial happened, Tullah was around 70 years old. But she was described as very well preserved. And she said and did some off-the-wall shit. An FBI agent would write a book that included this trial, and he would say in the book that she told me during our court break conversations that her political affiliation was sexually progressive, and that she was a 12 o'clock woman in a 9 o'clock town. Remember, she's 70, but a well-preserved 70. Now, one of the men that were on trial was Russell DeChico, and Tullah kept trying to talk to Renee DeChico, Russell's wife, every time they had a break in court. Now, after she kept bothering Renee, just every single time there was a break, she kept bothering Renee, FBI agents went to her and they were like, "What do you want with Renee DeChico? I need to know. You tell me right now, what the hell do you want with this girl?" And Tullah turns around and she says that she was trying to coerce Renee and her husband into a menage a trois. She wanted to have a threesome with Renee and Russell DeChico. Never mind the fact that Russell DeChico is on trial for stealing her artwork. She still wants to have a threesome. The prosecuting attorneys, now remember, these are the people that are working with her on her case of her artwork being stolen. These attorneys brought the issue up during trial because they had gone to her and been like, "Yo, you gotta stop. Like, you can't be propositioning these people that are on trial for stealing from you. You can't be propositioning them to have a threesome with you. You have to stop." And she was like, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna keep going. So I don't know what to tell you." But she would not stop. So the prosecutors had to go to the judge and tell the judge, like, "Yo, I don't know how to make this stop. She won't stop bothering the defendants to have a threesome with her." And the judge had to order Tullah to stop bothering Renee and Russell DeChico. He told her that she had to stop badgering the witnesses. Now, any romantic prospects that she had, any want of a threesome with Renee and her husband, were quashed after they were given a 5-year prison sentence. But Renee only got 3 years. So Renee was also on trial. Now, this wasn't the only art theft that the crew was under investigation for. They were under investigation for a few different art thefts. Paul Parness, a member of the crew, would become the FBI's new informant. He got arrested for the art theft and then decided to become a rat. He told the FBI that the burglary was committed by Russell DeChico and Louis Mavericks, and that Renee DeChico would help them, and that Parness's brother, Greg, was also in on it. So he literally ratted on his brother. DeChico was charged with stealing Rembrandt's A Portrait of a Young Man in an Armchair from the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, New York. After that, Parness was tagged for the burglary of about $50,000 worth of art from the home of a wealthy Buffalo banker named Seymour Knox II. So the burglars were all found and tried, and they all got jail time, which is obviously a really bad thing for the Magaddino crime family. But Tullah kept on being a wild card. This girl, I love her. Like, I don't know what she was doing before this trial, but I love her for what she did after it. So now all of this artwork, this is T. Edward Hanley's artwork. Tullah is just his wife, but it's his artwork. But he is really old, so Tullah never even told him that the artwork had been stolen. So she was the one at the trial. She was the one that was doing the news conferences and everything. But T. Edward Hanley never had a clue that his entire $12 million art collection was gone. So the FBI, they obviously recovered the artwork and they returned it. And instead of having the FBI deliver the artwork back to her house, she had the FBI deliver the artwork to a college for an exhibit. And she decided to leave all the FBI tape on the artwork. So the FBI drops the artwork off at the college. They do this exhibit with the FBI tape still on the artwork. And Tullah goes to the college and she gives a speech about how the artwork had been stolen and, blah, blah, blah. And then after her speech, she did a belly dance routine that ended with a handstand while she was wearing a dress. And let's just say she wasn't wearing undergarments, and she gave the entire audience of college officials, art connoisseurs, priests, and FBI agents a free show. In 1970, she put on an elaborate show during the opening night festivities for an art exhibition. And this exhibition was of art that she had donated to the San Francisco-based M.H.D. Young Museum. According to the New York Times, Tullah gave another performance, and during this performance, she changed 5 times into ever more revealing clothing, danced to live rock music with women covered only in body paint, so completely naked, covered in body paint, wrote her own sexual innuendo-infused labels for each piece of art called Tullah's Notes, and gave the embarrassed San Francisco mayor a private belly dance. 70-something years old. Just 72, 73 years old at this time. So my whole point is this girl is awesome. She went toe-to-toe with the Magaddino crime family. She won, and she spent the rest of her life putting on a goddamn show, and I can guarantee you that girl never had one boring day, and I'm living for it. Go Tullah. The government just kept coming after Magaddino. They came after him time and time and time again, and they arrested him time and time and time again. But they couldn't seem to get him in jail because every time he was arrested or he was called to the stand, he would miraculously have a heart attack or some issue related to his heart would pop up. He even pretended to have a heart attack during a raid on his house. And while he was at the scene of the raid pretending to have a heart attack, a doctor came and proved that he was faking the heart attack. Eventually, Magaddino was arrested for a bookmaking case, and his bedroom had to be used as the site of the arraignment because he couldn't leave his bed. As he got older, doctors determined that Magaddino was too weak to testify in court, so it actually ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy, and he really did get too sick to testify. Charges against Magaddino were dropped in 1973 as a result of the FBI's refusal to identify an informant that they had used in the bookmaking investigation. So, in other words, this trial where they held the arraignment in Magaddino's bedroom, it all came from an informant that they refused to identify. So let's talk about that for a minute because it's pretty wild what went down. Now, at this time, Magaddino is 80 years old. 80. And he was arrested alongside 9 other associates. They were arrested on November 26, 1968 by the FBI. And at the time, this arrest was touted as potentially the most crippling strike against the mafia in upstate New York. It was a gambling case, and the FBI arrested these 10 defendants on the word of a mysterious informant. But everybody, including the judge presiding over the case, could see through it. There was never an informant. What really happened is what the FBI is most well known for: illegal wiretaps. They had bugs all over the place, but they never really felt like going through the process of getting those bugs approved or getting warrants for them or listening to them correctly or doing absolutely anything by the book. So what comes of that? They get all of this amazing information, but they can't do shit with it because the wiretaps are illegal. So they arrest these guys. They tell the public that this is it. This is what's going to take down the mafia in New York. This is the set of charges that's going to do what we've been trying to do for 30 years now. We're going to take them down with this one. But it comes out during an 8-day trial that the state police had illegally tapped the phones of the defendants, and the FBI took the information that they got from the illegal taps, even though they said that the information that they got was independent of these illegal taps, and arrested these guys. And obviously, when they arrested them, they cited a mysterious informant that never existed in the first place. So when the Judge John O. Henderson, required the FBI to come up with this informant, they stalled. He said they had 20 days. The FBI came back and said they would never reveal the information of this secret informant, and all charges were dropped. Stefano Magaddino passed away on July 19th, 1974 as a result of a heart attack, which again, self-fulfilling prophecy. You spent 30 years saying that you couldn't go to court, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that because of this heart condition, and then you died of it. It's very sad, but that's what happened. He was laid to rest at Niagara Falls St. Joseph Cemetery. The internal war continued after Magaddino died, but it ended in the early 1980s when Joseph Todaro Sr. became the boss of the family. Magaddino made it to 82 years old without ever serving a long prison sentence. And he had a typical mafia funeral. Floral wreaths were delivered the entire day. So many people came to this funeral. It was crazy. And after he died, leadership was said to be handed off to Russell Buffalino, but again, obviously, in the early 80s, Joseph Todaro Sr. would become the boss. So again, as I said in the beginning of this episode, this is the first series I've ever had going over 5 parts. This is a 6-part series, and each one of these parts is long as hell. So if you have listened to this entire series and you're here listening to the end of it, I really appreciate you guys. You guys are troopers, and I'm really happy that you're so interested in the information that you are willing to sit through 7 hours of information. Like, you guys rock. But this is officially the end of Stefano Magaddino. I really enjoyed going over this and being able to go through this again. I did this episode the first time. It was like a 45-minute episode, so how I turned it into 7 hours is beyond me, but you know, we find a way to make a way. But yeah, I really enjoyed making it, and I really hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. Thanks so much for watching. As I said, I am going to take a little hiatus before I start my next series because I have to write the script, I have to get all the information together. I am going to be doing the Yakuza next episode, so hopefully that'll be really cool. I hope you guys will enjoy. But it is going to be a few weeks before I start recording that. So it's probably going to be about 3 weeks before I get my next episode out. So don't forget to join in 3 weeks when I continue to delve into the lives and legacies of some of the world's most fascinating and infamous gangsters in history. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things, and I will see you next time. Bye.